One day before my mom left for work, she told me I should take my little brother for a walk in the woods behind our house later. I reluctantly agreed. I was 15 at the time and I didn't like spending summer vacation with my brother. My brother and I used to get along when we were younger, but only because he was a baby. Now that he's 5 and can speak, I don't enjoy his company. Now there's one thing you should know before I tell you the story. He has freakishly good hearing, especially when it comes to animals, and he has even told us what the animals were saying. We never really thought much of it because he was a little kid, and little kids have pretty big and creative imaginations. Around 10 o'clock, I had gotten tired of my little brother begging me to take him for a walk in the woods for the past 3 hours. I had told him we would go soon. He then proceeded to bug me even more. I finally put my phone down and slipped on my sneakers. He practically dragged me out of the house. He was in such a hurry to go that he wouldn't let me stop to think if I needed anything else. We got to the trailhead that is about a quarter of a mile north of our house, and my little brother was beyond excited. We walked for quite a while and everything was going great. After about 45 minutes of walking, he said he heard something. He stopped in the middle of the trail and made me stop too so he could hear better. I asked him what he heard and he just shushed me. After about 3 minutes, he turned to me and said he heard a bird talking. He said we needed to leave immediately. I asked him what the bird said. My little brother proceeded to say that the bird said there was a crazy man in the woods with an axe. Of course, I didn't believe him, and I tried to get him to continue walking. I didn't want to go back home yet, but he wouldn't walk any further into the woods. I didn't want to argue with him, so I said he could go home by himself then, and I would be home in an hour. I knew he wouldn't walk home by himself. I knew as soon as I was far enough ahead of him, he would yell at me to wait for him, and then he would run to me. And of course, he did. As usual. I walked for about a minute before I heard, "Jenny, stop, the crazy man's gonna get you." I yelled back at him and I said I was fine and that he better hurry up. Within 30 seconds, I saw my little brother running up the trail towards me. When he finally got to me, he grabbed my hand and tried to drag me back. I said I didn't want to go home yet. I said we could start heading home in 20 minutes. He hesitantly agreed. After about 10 minutes, I heard something. It sounded like footsteps in the grass. My little brother heard it too. He slowly looked at me and whispered, "We should run." I whispered back, "Why?" He whispered that the crazy man was going to get us if we didn't go home. I thought he was full of it and I continued walking. A minute later, we were standing in a very tree-filled area that was next to an open field. My brother stopped and pointed at the field. I thought he saw a deer or a bunny, something like that. I looked over, and standing in the middle of the field was a dude with an axe held high above his head. He was holding it like a trophy or something. Then I noticed that he was covered in blood. I turned around to face my little brother and I told him to be quiet. I slowly walked over to my brother and picked him up and began to run home. I'd never ran that fast in my whole entire life, especially because I had an extra 40 pounds I was carrying. After about 15 minutes of running, I felt like I was gonna die, so I put my little brother down and stood there just to take a quick breather. Then we heard footsteps in the gravel, so I picked up my brother again and ran off the trail until we came to a huge bush that we could hide in. It was not very far off the trail, so we could still see the trail, and we could see the bloody man with the axe. I reached in my pocket for my phone so I could call for help once this guy was far enough away. Then I realized I forgot my phone at home. I left it on the coffee table when my brother dragged me out of the house. I had no clue what to do. So we waited and waited. We waited for at least 3 hours before I decided to walk onto the trail to see if I could see the man. He was nowhere to be seen, so I motioned for my brother to come over to me. I decided I didn't feel safe with him walking, so I decided to carry him again. I walked slowly and quietly. I had no clue how far we were from the trailhead. After a few minutes, we reached the beginning of the trail. I put my brother down and fumbled for my house key. I got it and whipped the door open. I told my brother to go and lock all of the doors and windows while I called my mom. I found my phone and called my mom. She answered and asked why I hadn't answered my phone for the previous 30 times she called. I started crying and told her what happened. She said she would be home in an hour and she told me to call the police. Called the police. They were at my house in less than 10 minutes. The officer asked us a bunch of questions, then said he and his team would go clear the woods to make sure he wasn't still lurking around there. After he left, there was no phone calls or any news from the police. Fast forward a few days later. We were watching the news. Police had found 3 bodies of 3 unidentified teenage girls in the woods, who were viciously cut to pieces by an axe, the same woods that my brother and I had been in 3 days prior, and they had not found the murderer. To this day, 25 years later, we still don't know who murdered those girls. He could still be out there, lurking in those woods behind my old house, just waiting for his next victim.